everybody. Welcome to this pre-concert talk of Mahler's Second Symphony. My name is Vanessa Gardner. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Toledo Alliance for the Performing Arts, and I am joined here today by Principal Clarinetist George Kloss, our Principal Second Violin and Artistic Administrator Merwin Sue, and our beloved Music Director Elaine Trudell. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
So we're talking about Mahler 2 today because we are going to be rebroadcasting our 2019 performance of Mahler 2 over the Easter holiday on Tappa Streaming. This will be a free broadcast, so anybody will be able to go online and watch this performance. And Elaine, why don't you tell everybody why now? Why did we decide to rebroadcast this performance of Mahler 2?
Well, hello everybody. We wanted to have something meaningful around Easter as well. The theme of the resurrection, the theme of going through an experience and coming out and the other side a different way, being changed, being different, going through difficult things and coming out with some transfiguration. I think this is very appropriate for these times. And the time of Easter, of course, is very appropriate for that. So I thought all of those, the best piece we could have done. And also, of course, my colleague played so well the concert that it would be a sin in itself not to have this performance shared at this moment.
We've been waiting for the right opportunity, and this felt like it. George, I understand that Mahler 2 has a really special place in your life, your musical journey. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why Mahler 2 is so special for you and your family?
Yes, thank you. And hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here for this talk. So yeah, Mahler 2 it seems like it's been part of my progress as a musician for my whole career, really. I first played it as a student at a music festival in Brevard, North Carolina. And at that time, I played the bass clarinet part, which was a really amazing part and has a beautiful duet with the English horn in the first movement. So that was, I mean, at that point, that was really transformational for me as an orchestral player. The next time I played it was as principal clarinet in Toledo in 2008, and in between the Friday and Saturday night performances, my twin daughters were born. So that was quite a remarkable experience to play that piece the same day they were born. And it's just like one of those memories that just stays with you, for your whole life. So, and then of course, the most recent performance in 2019 was incredibly moving, and just, it's such an amazing journey, this piece. And Mahler, he in his symphonies, he wanted to describe the universe, right? I mean, he was trying to cover all the bases. So I feel like it's such an incredible journey to listen to this piece again, and particularly this performance.
I know that it's hard to listen or get through a performance without incredible amounts of emotion pouring out of you. So I can only imagine how difficult that must have been to regroup for that second performance after the birth of your daughters. Wow. What about you, Merwin? How many times have you played Mahler 2? What does Mahler 2 mean to you?
I can't follow that. I cannot follow that. Oh my gosh. The Mahler second, I think for me, it's something that it's always been one of those touchstone pieces. You feel like you kind of measure yourself by pieces like the Mahler Second Symphony. And I've never really had the chance to kind of be as immersed in it as I was with this last performance, because we were actually putting together a chorus, kind of assembling that and kind of being on that element of it. And I'm sure Alan will talk a little bit more about that as we kind of talk more about the choral movements. But when you're playing it, it's one thing, but it's really something that demands so much from the entire organization. And it requires so much from the production crew and from all the behind the scenes people. And and when I was, kind of part of that, like you kind of feel like just like one little gear inside this giant clock, and everything's moving forward inevitably. And that was something that, once we got to the performances, there was this sense of kind of release and flow that I was actually able to enjoy it after having, been behind the scenes for so much of it.
So Merwin, let's talk about the first movement.
Well, I think for me, it's really hard to separate the Second Symphony from the Third Symphony. I think both of them have this sort of sense of where the first movement really could be a piece in and of itself. It's really kind of this, it stitches all of the early symphonies together, because the first symphony has this presentation of a hero, and the second symphony, you have this funeral march really for this hero. And I think just from the very first strokes in the violins, there's this like kind of, all of a sudden you're plunged into this epic journey. And it really after the first one, you feel like you've had an entire work in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a workout to get through the first movement. Elaine, what can you tell us about those moments for you on the podium right before the pieces start and going through that whole first movement? What just tell us about what's going through your heart and your mind.
When you step up to the podium, when you step up to the plate to start a Mahler symphony or a Beethoven Ninth or something like that, I mean, it's serious. It's very serious business. It's very serious music. I don't take myself seriously, but there's a responsibility that goes with it. There's I wouldn't call it a weight. It's really just a responsibility that you have there to make sure that the grand arc of things is respected. And there's a difference between doing the arc of a movement that's 6 minutes long and an arc and a movement that's 27 minutes long. So my job as a conductor, and I had that comment earlier in my career, is that, musicians appreciate when a conductor is relaxed and easygoing, but you have to be a good actor, in the sense, not in the sense that you're faking, in the sense that you have to convey the emotions that's in that symphony, not in a tacky way, but, like we start this at it starts like that. You can't go on the podium and say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's do this. I mean, it makes no sense. So you have to be inhabited by the piece you're going to play, the piece that we're all going to do together. And it's part of your job. Otherwise, you're distracting the orchestra. You have to be part of the whole thing. And since you don't play an instrument, you have to kind of show how this is supposed to go. So, like for this performance, like what you see, I go on the podium, I wait a little bit. It's not that I'm thinking about the grandeur of the world or anything. I just take a moment. There's something to be said about just taking a moment before you start. And even that first movement, as Merwin was saying, it's basically the end of the first symphony, because the end of the first symphony is D major, finished, ta-da, the hero lives, Now we take the hero, we bring him to his grave, and then starts the process. And he wrote almost at the same time. So we go from a D major, very brilliant, to a C minor, very dark. And then we start, instead of, we start. So it's start as a bit, not similar, but it has a relationship, because this is kind of the Mahler is like George said, it's a universe, but the whole symphony is also a universe. For him, it's so big, but so personal, so huge, but so much chamber music, It's exactly like George said. It's the universe is in every note there.
So we talked a lot about the length of the first movement and just all of the effort and emotion and focus that goes into that first movement. And then the second movement, a completely different style. Merwin, I know this is a really, really delicate moment for the strings. Talk a little bit about coming off of that high of the first movement and all of that craziness, and then just totally changing moods and directions.
I think it's actually very easy to empathize with this as a listener because there's a real physicality to it. You can just see at the end of the first minute, there's just so much physicality to it. And it's literally trying to calm your heart rate down. Whenever you have just been trying, like if you imagine the moments after you've been running to catch a plane, and then you sit down and then you have to lead a meditation the next immediately afterward. It's so difficult to make that transition. And I think even though we're talking about this music and with Mahler, it's so easy to elevate that level of discourse because he lives on such a high plane. For us, Mahler gives time to the orchestra. He writes in time to the orchestra in between these movements because he knows you need to literally bring your adrenaline down. You need to calm your breath. You need to slow down your heart rate. And then the beginnings of the second movement, if you're a little bit shaky, those notes don't speak exactly at the correct time, and you have to somehow feel like you're one collective organism with the entire string section. And I know that when I'm starting it, that first bar always feels like it takes forever. That there's like an entire minute in between each one of those up bows because you're just trying to calm yourself down. But to me, that's actually one of my favorite moments in the piece, is all of a sudden, like it's like a complete set change or a complete filter change. It feels like you're 20 years in the past.
Let's talk a little bit about the third movement. George, you have a clip picked out for us to listen to. Why don't you tee that up and then we'll have a listen.
Yes, absolutely. First, I'll just start by saying that, considering the lightness of the second movement, the third movement, which actually takes the place of the scherzo or humorous movement, is actually very dark. And so the very beginning of it starts with this fortissimo timpani part, which I think is the cue. And then it goes into the section where the strings and then the winds start to unfold this kind of very dark and sinister figure in 16th notes. So maybe you can play the clip and then I'll talk more about what he's trying to represent in that music. So this movement is actually based on a song from Das Knabenwunderhorn, or the Youth's Magic Horn, a collection of anonymous German poems that he also wrote a song in arrangement with for voice too, with the lyrics from the poem. But he left out the lyrics here, and I think there are a couple of reasons. One is that I don't think he wanted it to be so literal, because the next movement, Urlicht, actually he uses the soprano in that movement. But here, he also wanted to expand the movement, I think, to make it more of a bridge between, sort of reconnect the gravity of the first movement in through the fourth movement into the amazing and climactic fifth movement. So there are moments of real seriousness, which we'll get to later in this movement as well. But so it's based on the poem where Saint Anthony preaches to the fish, right? And it's a very humorous poem, actually, because the fish are in this poem are all listening to the preacher. The preacher goes into the church, there's nobody there, so he walks down to the river, he starts preaching to the fish, and the fish all start jumping out of the water, and that's what all these noodly figures in the strings and woodwinds are meant to represent. Maybe you can cue up the next section, which features the E-flat clarinet. And this could, the E-flat, he writes with humor in the writing, in the part. So this could be a fish that is being a little bit more sarcastic. Yeah, that's the spot. That's a fun part to play.
I can kind of imagine a fish jumping out of the water and its tail just kind of sort of na-na-na-na-na-na.
The other thing, which I mentioned earlier, which is how it bridges this movement and then the fifth movement, is this climactic moment, which you're about to play, which is a sudden threatening sense of terror that occurs. And it's very foreboding, and it's basically signaling what's going to occur at the beginning of the last movement.
And George, if I may, it's exactly the same chord as the opening of the fifth.
Yeah,
it's like based around a B flat minor chord.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like it's like all of his symphonies are one continuous story. I think if you look at the connections, it's pretty incredible.
Okay, now we get into serious business. Okay, we're getting to the last leg of the symphony, the Urlich, which is basically how do you say, primordial light. So it goes from that gives us the total setting, and he takes this poem that exists already and he writes the last part himself. So it goes something as you're in the worst of pain, the direst of pain. You'd rather be in heaven, but you're in pain, and you're stuck. How do I get to the pain to stop and to get to a better place? But to get to that better place, I don't want to go to that middle place, which is usually death. So it's kind of so that's the dilemma there. The fourth, you have to listen to the whole thing, and Susan Platz is singing it with us. You will hear the best version of this possible, with the emotion, the understanding of the text, and also just there's a certain innocence that you have to sing with. You have to accept. It's difficult. It's about accepting. It's about, it's accepting things without proof. That's what's so difficult, and that hurts a lot. Bang, fifth movement. Oh, okay. So now there's going to be the pain before the transfiguration. So the first excerpt you're going to hear is something that I find very interesting personally. Is the first time we hear this theme that will be transform again as we go along, and it's bum, 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 bum. It sounds a little bit like Dies Irae, but it's another take on it. It's not in that tonality at the beginning. It's okay. But for me, it was a big discovery first time I heard it. It was the first time I heard the sound of the clarinet, the oboe, and the flute meld into one sound. And I became obsessed with that sound. And obviously Mahler too, because it comes in a lot of his pieces. But that sound, it's a sound that when you put all three together, it's an instrument that does not exist that appears. So once we hear that do, si, do, la, there's a very particular way in Mahler writing this, huh? And George, you know this very well because you play in this, is that you have half notes, whole notes with accents like this. It's like pom, pom. There's something heaviness to it, but there's a little separation between them. And anyway, it gives that sense of a kind of a bell. It gives that sense of a Dies Irae that's not a Dies Irae. That's his own version of it. So we're still in the theme of that. Then I thought we could go and listen to another part where there's another way to talk about it. This one is when we get to almost before purgatory, let's say, everything becomes loose like that, and it's written the other way. Bum, 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 bum. It's going up instead of going down, so we can listen to it perhaps. So and you hear again, bum, bum, bum. We're on that theme. So there's an evolution of that. And first is very much alone. Events arrive, importance develops, and then it all deconstructs, right? And then after that, we get to that part where we go through, and of course, they're just the excerpts that we play. So we don't want to give everything away right now. But so we've gone through all of this. We've gone through like some kind of purgatory, and then we get into that place where it's time to rise again. So we start by saying rise again, but Mahler, instead of saying rise again, he goes rise again. It's like in a lot of the music, you always notice, especially in Bach, you notice that when it's a human thing, it's fast music, high music, very virtuosic. When it's divine, it's slow music. Right? And Bach, all the whole notes on the longer values, they talk about divinity, the divine, and human things are always like contrapunctual, and they're always very complicated and lots of notes. But after this point, we get to this point, and I love that he did this. Same thing. We go, I said that, then we can listen to that part a little bit. So now the chorus has come in, and that's they sing for about 15 minutes in the entire piece, but it's the most important of like.
Mm.
I would love to be, to go back in time and be at the premiere and just for that moment just go like, and what we did actually in Toledo for this is that we prepared a chorus that had some professionals in it. Of course, we had the opera chorus, we had the chorus from University of Michigan, we had other professionals, but we put together a chorus of local choristers from about 10 different choirs. And every Saturday afternoon, before Saturday evening we have Masterworks, Friday and Saturday afternoon, all my Saturday afternoons when I was there, I would go to the professional building and we would just rehearse. Sometimes it would be 12 of them, sometimes 20, sometimes 8, sometimes 25. But we talk about this, we talk about Mahler, we talk about what the piece means. And for them, I mean, it's the first time, and probably the only time they get to do something like that. And I really wanted to create an experience that we had all kinds of different humans coming together. So the next excerpt we're going to do is the part we're talking about cease trembling, stop trembling, prepare yourself to live. So you hear just a man, da, dee, da, dee, da, hör auf zu geben, auf zu beben. Then it stops. Bereite dich. That's prepare yourself. Now, come on, prepare yourself. And then to live, it goes to live. And then we get into the last part of the symphony, which is the resurrection. And of course, the resurrection, always soft going into something. It's a soft, there is something that's really hard in life sometimes, but when we resurrect, it's coming back to life. It's not like, haha, you haven't conquered something. You have gone through something, the experience. You bring the experience with you in this resurrection. So we can listen to a little bit of that. Now we get to the end, almost the end, because we don't want to play the end in this chat at all, because you have to listen to, you have to have the whole experience to be able to finish and to feel the entire thing. So this last part again, ba, da, 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 the theme that's going into like a really major, very positive way. Now we're very loud. That the organ will come in, the church bells, everything will be in it, and then it says, rise again, rise again, rise again. And they said, rise, be courageous, and God will carry you, and you get carried until the end.
Alain, you said something a moment ago that to me, I think is really just encapsulates where we are in society and in the world and in our time today. So to maybe wrap up, you said, this transformation is not that you conquered something and that you won. It's that you experienced something and you take that experience with you for this new phase or new time. And that's kind of what we're all thinking about right now. we have experienced something profound in our lifetimes over this last year. So what are each of you taking through this experience of the last year of the COVID-19 pandemic? What are you taking forward as your experience into your new life going forward?
I think mainly a sense of hope for the future, but also realizing how fortunate we have been as a community and an orchestra to continue to do what we do for our audiences, and also just to realize how essential music is to our lives, and that has never been more true during this period. So that's how I'm feeling at this moment.
You know, we've been talking so much about the music, and I think it would be I would feel very differently if I were a colleague in a different orchestra which hadn't been able to play. But I remember in just in early March being able to play a piece, and then we hadn't had people in the audience for 3 or 4 months. We'd been able to, play music and work with our colleagues, but I remember just starting the Tchaikovsky Serenade for Strings and feeling this visceral rush of the fact that there was an audience there. And music is so critically important, it is, but I think it's so much of it is about the connection between people. And I really, we missed you guys here, and we missed you guys so much, and it was great to be able to see some of you back, and we can't wait to welcome all of you back, because just that chance just a few weeks ago to be able to play for some of you meant everything. So it meant a lot.
Elaine, I know it's been really tough for you. You have been sequestered away from your Toledo Symphony family. So what has this last year meant to you, and what are you taking forward?
First of all, is that, I miss, of course, our audience. I miss our great public, but I miss my colleagues. It's ridiculous. Miss making music with them. I actually, last concert I conducted was Toledo Symphony and Brahms Fourth. So that's one thing especially talking about Mahler Second with you guys, and talking, hopefully it's interesting for you listening to it, is that it's exactly what you said, Vanessa. We're never going to conquer something like this. We're going to experience it, live through it, and that's what makes us accept the future. It will be different. It's going to be a wonderful future, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we have to live through it. We should not be afraid to go through what we have to go through. I know that the Dalai Lama said, if you lose something in life, don't lose the experience. What happened, because then you've lost everything, right? You'll have to learn something from it. For me, I'm trying to see what I learned from this experience and what makes me a better person, better musician, and moving forward. And I've learned a lot in this time. I mean, we learn a lot because this is an imposed time for thinking, to have some reflection, and to have to, a time to gather our thoughts. And sometimes with life that goes very fast, we don't always have that kind of time. We're always production. When you have a bit of a moment there, you start thinking more about the why than the how, sometimes. And this is interesting because I think I'm going to bring that back to the orchestra. I'm a bit of a different person.
I just think about the first note of the symphony, that tremble, that tremor, and that fear.
Yeah.
And thinking back 13 months ago, that tremor and fear was starting to ripple through the entire world, as we did not know what was coming to us for the next 12 months. And now we have been through a transformation, and we do have more of life to look forward to. And we've taken these experiences over these last 12 months, and there's an energy of anticipation, I think, in the air, in the weather, in the hope, and what the vaccine is bringing. So in a way, this symphony is not just something to share on Easter. It really means so much more than that. And it's almost that journey from March 13th of 2020 to here we are now in April. And there's so much more to look forward to. So
True.
thank you all for participating in this pre-concert talk. This has just been really special for me, especially being a new part of this Toledo Symphony family and getting to have this conversation with you. And I hope that all of our audience will tune in and enjoy this presentation of Mahler's Second Symphony, performed originally in 2019. So thank you and enjoy.